back in the back garden again, and I am planting 6 rows of cover crop. I know you're probably tired of seeing our pictures or posts about cover crops, but it's kind of grown on me. It's been something that each year it's been more and more exciting for me. We never did cover crop up until probably about 3 years ago, and we just did a little bit. But since then, I've seen more and more benefit to it, and we're growing or making all of our compost on the property here. So the cover crop is almost like making our, not necessarily compost, but growing our fertility in place. So that's just less. If I have a nice cover crop stand, I usually put about half the amount of compost on those beds. So that's about half the time to compost those beds. And it saves as far as how much compost we need to make to meet our needs. So yeah, I just want to quick talk about what we did here. This is where our corn and winter squash were, at least our first planting of corn and winter squash. See the vines and stuff are all dead. We cut them down yesterday and we pulled them all to the walkways, kind of stumped them down, and that'll just be our mulch in place. We used to take everything out, give it to the chickens, but that's very time consuming. So we just put it in the walkways, that's our mulch, and if there's weeds that come up through, we just have to pull them. This does make it a little bit hard for the stirrup hoe to get them, but for the most part, there's not a whole lot of weeds, so just pulling can manage it really quick. So in here, you can see where I watered. So that's where I planted the cover crop. And there's a little bit of gap in these rows because there's corn stubbles here. So when we chop them down, we leave the roots in the ground. So I planted 2 rows on either side of the corn stubble. And then this row, and that row had our winter squash. And there we just pulled the whole plants out. And so I planted the 4 rows evenly. Where here I put 2 rows on each side and they're kind of close together. But that's all right. So I just got finished. I'll probably put the drip lines out. So yeah, we put all the residue from the crop before in the walkways. And then for our beds, we don't till them to get them ready. All I do is with a stirrup hoe, if you know what a stirrup hoe is, it's a hoe with like a rectangular face on it. And you actually use like the cutting edge on the bottom of it back and forth. And so what I do is I just break the crust of the surface about 1 inch deep, not too deep, just 1 inch, because we're seeding about half an inch deep. So I do that just to break the crust. If it's really wet, I usually don't have to do that, but we're pretty dry right now, so I have to break that crust or else the seeder isn't going to seed well. So I do that, which takes a little bit of time, but this whole section maybe took about 2 hours, which seems like a lot, but if it cuts down on half the compost, each bed when I compost takes 15 minutes, I think. So here you have an hour and a half, 45 minutes, and just compost and save time of putting down compost. So that's not quite 2 hours, but that's part of the time. And there's just a wide range of other benefits, from weed suppression to feeding the soil biology. So these here will keep watered for today and tomorrow. Friday is supposed to rain, and that's another reason why I'm kind of pushed to get them in, because I want to get it in before the rain on Friday and Saturday, at least hopefully the rain that we get, because that'll keep those seeds moist and prime condition to germinate. So here's what it'll look like in probably 2 to 3 weeks. Now by season's end, before these die off for the year, these will probably be about 2 feet high. So these are looking really nice. So I just want to show you, see if I can get some roots out. I didn't get all the roots, but here you can start to see, it's kind of hard to tell, but the roots coming down from the seed, there's a little bit. There's one sticking out there, if you can see it. But you see there's dirt kind of caked on the root. If the dirt would just fall off, it'd be nice and white. But the dirt is actually sticking to the root. There's a little bit better. You can see how the dirt's sticking to the root. That's a good sign, actually. That means that there's a lot of biology that's occupying the root of that plant, and that's what's holding the soil there. So the plant roots will secrete exudates, which is like liquid carbon, into the soil, which attracts the biology of the soil. And depending on the composition of the liquid carbon, it attracts certain microbes depending on what nutrients the plant needs. So if you pull your plants up and the soil just falls off and all you have are the white roots and the soil isn't sticking to the roots, that's actually a sign that you don't have a lot of biology in the soil. So you want to see if I can get, it's hard to get too much out because the soil is a little firmer, so it's hard to get all the roots up, but you see how that's just coated in soil there. I don't want to get too close. The closer I get, it gets more blurry. But anyways, that's a good sign. So that's why this cover crop, after you pull the plants out or when the plants die, all that soil biology that's there, it's kind of dependent on either organic matter in the soil to keep it going or plant roots to feed those organisms. They need, the whole biological cycle depends on carbon. So if your carbon isn't there in the soil through organic matter, you have to maintain living plants there to constantly feed those organisms, which, if done properly, will maintain a healthy environment and healthy array of bacteria that's beneficial to the plants and not harmful. So even if I didn't get this cover crop in, our organic matter is pretty high, so I wouldn't be too worried about the biological activity like being wiped out by next season. But just like today, it's sunny, it's not extremely hot, but this soil can really heat up. And a lot of your biology may actually be lost through burning of the soil, as far as the soil getting too hot when the sun hits it. So as this cover crop grows up, not only does it feed the soil biology, it protects it by shading the soil. So there's a lot going on there. It's something that doesn't seem important, but in our kind of farming, where we don't have any inputs besides what we produce on the farm. Now we do bring in wood chips, but that's all material that if we were to chip ourselves would come right from the property. But that's one step we do save, is we do get wood chips from arborists, but we have a lot of food and nutrients leaving the farm, so we have to bring some in the form of wood chips. But as far as like synthetics or like nitrogen sources, organic sources, as far as like fish or manures, things like that, the only manure that we get is through our chickens. But besides that, nitrogen, there's peas in this mix. We grow green beans and sugar snap peas, and all those are nitrogen fixers. So by the season's end, we have about 11 beds planted now in cover crop, 11 or 12. We'll have about 25 beds, which is about a fourth of our garden. So about every year right now, we're getting about a fourth of our garden put in cover crop, which is pretty good. But I would like for it to be more, but we can kind of be limited because we go so late with crops in the ground. But until next time, eat well, live well.